Welcome to the Explainer. To really get what makes Ethereum so powerful, you've actually got to go back to the beginning, back to Bitcoin. Because Ethereum wasn't born to compete with Bitcoin. It was created as an answer to a promise that Bitcoin, for all its genius, just couldn't fulfill.
So Bitcoin gave the world its first real taste of decentralized digital money, which was huge. But here's the thing. Lurking just underneath the surface of the coin itself was this absolutely revolutionary technology. And a few really smart people started asking a very, very powerful question. What if that tech could do more than just be money? Like, much more.
Okay, so to really wrap our heads around this, we have to understand that when Bitcoin first showed up back in 2009, it wasn't just one big idea. It was actually two. And that second one, well, that's the one that changed everything. So first, of course, you had the currency itself, Bitcoin. But the second idea was the engine that made the whole thing work, the blockchain. You can think of it like this magical, shared notebook that absolutely anyone can look at, but nobody can change. That was the real breakthrough that made digital money without a bank possible for the very first time.
Now, the genius of the blockchain was that it solved this huge problem that had totally stumped people for years, the double spend problem. I mean, how do you stop someone from just copying a digital dollar and spending it over and over again? The blockchain's answer was to create this public, unchangeable record of every single transaction that everyone could trust, no middleman needed.
And if you really look at how it works, the Bitcoin model is it's elegantly simple. It's what's called a state transition system. The state is really just the list of who owns all the unspent coins, the UTXOs. So a transaction simply takes some of those unspent coins, spends them, and then creates new ones. It was built to do one thing, and one thing perfectly: track the ownership of money.
But once you have this thing, this secure, decentralized ledger, you can't help but ask, what else could we put on this thing? If this technology can secure money, what else could it secure? The floodgates of imagination were about to burst wide open.
And just like that, a wave of new ideas started popping up. People were imagining creating their own custom currencies to represent company shares, tracking digital property, building decentralized domain names with projects like Namecoin, and even creating these automated agreements they called smart contracts. But every single one of these amazing ideas, they all slammed right into the same brick wall.
And here's the fundamental issue. Bitcoin was built to be a fortress, right? Not a creative studio. Its internal programming language, called script, was deliberately kept super simple to make it as secure as possible. This meant that trying to build these complex applications on top of Bitcoin was kind of like trying to browse the web on a pocket calculator. It just wasn't built for that.
To be specific, there were 4 huge roadblocks. It wasn't Turing complete, which is just a fancy way of saying it couldn't handle complex, looping logic. It was value blind. A program couldn't even tell how much money was being sent in a transaction. It had no state, so a contract couldn't remember anything that happened before. And it was blockchain blind. It couldn't pull in other data from the blockchain, which you'd need for something like a random number for a bet. The grand vision had hit a total dead end. Something brand new is needed.
And that is where Ethereum comes in. It wasn't trying to be a better version of Bitcoin. No, it was trying to be something completely different. A blockchain that was designed from the ground up to be a platform for anything.
This quote from the original white paper, it just captures that aha moment perfectly. The big idea was to build a blockchain that had a flexible, universal programming language baked right in. So instead of being limited, developers could now create any rules, any kind of transaction, pretty much any application they could dream up. Ethereum was basically a blank canvas.
This is probably the best way to think about it. If Bitcoin is like a specialized calculator built to do one job perfectly, then Ethereum is like a smartphone. It's a general-purpose computer that you can build millions of different apps for.
So how did Ethereum actually pull this off? What was the secret sauce that turned a simple ledger into this world's computer? Well, it all comes down to a few brilliant new ideas.
Okay, the most important concept to get is the smart contract. These are basically the apps that run on the Ethereum computer. Think of it like a digital vending machine. You put in some money, you make a choice, and the machine automatically spits out your item. A smart contract does the exact same thing with digital value, but for almost anything you can think of, from a concert ticket to a share of stock. It's an agreement that just runs itself.
Now, to make that work, Ethereum introduced this totally new, kind of radical idea.
It has accounts for people, right, just like Bitcoin, but it also has contract accounts, accounts that are controlled entirely by code. So for the first time ever, a computer program could own and control money all by itself, becoming this true autonomous agent on the network.
This just fundamentally changed what the blockchain was even keeping track of. You see, Ethereum's state doesn't just list who owns what. It tracks the current code and the internal memory, the storage, of every single smart contract. This is the key that gives applications a persistent memory and lets them have complex logic.
Okay, but wait a second. If you're building a world computer that anyone can run code on, what stops someone from just writing an infinite loop and crashing the entire network? The answer is gas. Every single computational step, every little operation requires a tiny fee, a bit of gas. It's the fuel for the whole system, and it brilliantly makes sure that no single program can hijack the network without paying for the resources it's using.
So, with all these new tools in hand, this powerful programming language, these smart contracts, and this fuel system called gas, the vision for what was now possible it exploded. The original white paper laid out this incredible blueprint for a new universe of what it called decentralized applications, or dApps.
First up, token systems. With just a few lines of code, suddenly anyone could create their own digital tokens. And these could represent anything: a brand new currency, shares in a company, a digital claim on a physical house. You could literally create entire new economies right on top of the blockchain. And of course, that naturally leads you straight to the idea of decentralized finance, or DeFi. By programming these smart contracts, you could create automated financial tools, like contracts that protect farmers against price swings or totally new kinds of derivatives, building an entire financial system that runs on code, not on banks.
But the vision went even further, right into our own digital lives. The white paper talked about systems for decentralized identity and reputation, giving you a sort of digital passport that you and only you truly own and control, not one managed by some massive corporation. And then you get to what is maybe the most mind-bending idea of them all: decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. We're talking about virtual organizations where the rules and bylaws are written directly into unstoppable smart contracts. These are organizations that can basically run themselves, with members voting on how to spend money or change the rules, and it's all enforced by the code itself. Wild stuff.
And honestly, the list just kept going. The original vision included things like decentralized file storage, cloud computing, secure online voting systems, even peer-to-peer prediction markets. It became pretty clear that the scope of this new world computer was really only limited by our imagination.
So we'll end with this question. The jump from Bitcoin to Ethereum wasn't just some technical upgrade. It was a philosophical one. It asks us to think about shifting our trust away from traditional institutions and towards transparent, open code. I mean, if contracts can enforce themselves and organizations can run on their own, what does that really mean for how we trust each other, how we work together, and how we build our future?